It is Kate, Kelly, and PozzA here, and we are back to discuss all things to do with the MotoGP test. Starting off nice and easy is the fact that both Ducati and KTM banned several riders from speaking to the media. So it is definitely like a gentleman's agreement that riders can test the new machinery that they'll be racing on at the first test of the 2025 season, which is exactly what we just had. So we know that Maverick Vinales was able to talk, but Enea Bastianini, Jorge Martin, and Jack Miller were all unable to talk to the media. What do you guys think about this banning? Do you think it's the right thing to do, or should they be free to talk as they wish?
I understand why some teams would I understand why the ban does exist. I'm still not sure why it's kind of like a mix of some riders can talk and some riders can't. I think that part is a bit silly. But as a general aspect, you don't want your riders to go shit talking, but the bike before it actually even gets out on track. So I can definitely see why the rule exists. I just think it's silly that half the riders can speak and half the riders can't.
Yeah, it's a bit odd if there's like a split between which riders are allowed to and which aren't. But at the same time, it's something that's been happening for probably like many years at this point. Even going back to when Valentino Rossi switched to Honda, at that point, or switched to Yamaha from Honda, at that point he wasn't even allowed to ride the bike until his Honda contract was fully up. So it's good that we're not seeing that side of things sort of so much anymore. Uh, it would be nice to be able to get some of the riders' thoughts after like the first time on their bikes, but it's just one of those things that sort of happens, and teams will be sort of secretive, not wanting riders to say anything about what's happening, that sort of thing. So I understand it, but it would be nice to see otherwise in some cases.
And back to that rider who was able to talk, Maverick Vinales, he wasn't able to give any direct comparisons, and apparently the press officers did have to step in quite a bit because people were wording questions with direct comparisons, and they had to be like, you need to reword that question to the journalist. But one thing that's easily noticed is that he did not test timing, and he definitely said that he absolutely loves KTM's starting assistants, whatever they are, which is no surprise given how, I suppose, devastating his starts were this year. At least he won't go from front row to 20th, hopefully, next year. Other riders that we did hear from were the rookies. They all seemed quite comfortable on the bikes, which was very good. They were all only a second or two off the pace, which is pretty darn good for the start. But all three of them did crash. Not overly unexpected, sorry. But what did you guys think of the rookies' performances? And did you expect more from any of them?
Honestly, no. I don't expect a lot from the rookies because, well, the answer's in the wording. The call from inside the house, they're rookies. You can't expect them to get on a brand new bike, a much faster bike, and just expect them to be like, right, go off, get your top 10. You can't expect them to just be like that. There's going to be crashes, there's going to be bad timings, and that's just the whole part of adapting. It's going to be the same in the junior series. They're rookies. You can never expect too much from them, and I don't expect a lot from Aldeguer. I don't expect a lot from Chandra. I don't expect a lot from any of them. Like, of course, I want them to get good results and good timings, but I can't sit there and morally say that they did bad in that test because they didn't. They did quite well.
Yeah, I haven't personally seen some of the times they were putting up, but the crashes, they're gonna come eventually. It's just part of the learning curve. So it's one of those things where if you can get them out of the way like really quickly, then you're set to sort of adapt quicker, probably. But again, it's part of the learning curve for pretty much every rider that comes into any new class, really. They're gonna have ups, downs, probably more downs sort of in the first maybe half. of the rookie year, but yeah, it's just how it plays out. And obviously, they'll probably want to start pushing as quick as they can, as soon as they can, and that'll probably contribute to more crashes. But yeah, just part of the learning curve. It's going to happen for rookies.
One rookie in particular I'm obviously interested in because I'm a firm member of the Fermin Aldeguer fan club. Fermin was seen talking to Marc Marquez after the testing. I almost said race then, but after the testing. Part of it, I think, is probably because Fermin's stepping into where Mark was, into that Grassini team. But I'm also wondering if some of it is the possible potential of Fermin Aldeguer. And this could be copium and my total bias, but it also might not be because Gigi Dell'Igna was asked about the Fermin signing because obviously his performance this year was not ideal. Let's just go with that. But he said in a couple of years, Fermin should be a title contender once he figures some stuff out. That stuff, he didn't specify what it was. I'd assume it's part of the mental game because a lot of Aldeguer's mistakes this year were his own. But what do you two think about Fermin? Do you think these comments from Gigi were correct? Or do you think that maybe it was a bit too early to push him up into GP?
I think the comments were right. Maybe Paz disagrees with me, but I think a lot of the hate that was coming towards Fermin was purely because he was signed and then he wasn't doing the performance that people expected of him in Moto2 and they just went ballistic. He had a bad year. Like I can't make car references, I can't. But if you watch F2 and F1, I think you can get the reference I'm making here. But like you can't, just because they had a bad season in a junior series doesn't mean that they're going to be absolutely horrendous in their like the upper class. I think Fermin can genuinely do well once he gets adapted to that bike. He may not adapt as quick as the others, but he will adapt, and I can definitely see that he'll be a champion in a few years. And I think the hate that's been thrown towards him is silly, like just genuinely silly.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to get to a sort of stage of competitiveness eventually. It's just sort of the fact that I still think he was rushed up a bit too quickly into GP and could have used another year or two in Moto2 just to get a bit more experience, get a bit stronger on the sort of mental side of things and stop making some of the mistakes we saw this year. But again, I still think he'll get there eventually. I do agree that it might be a bit slower than the other two, just based on, again, experience. But yeah, he'll get there eventually, in my opinion, and start competing higher up the field as time progresses.
Now, let's talk about that person that Fermin was talking to, Marc Marquez, because the livery that he ran, it was red, but it was, in my opinion, a hideous shade of red because it sort of burnt your eyes out through the TV screen kind of red. And it was not Ducati red, it was definitely Marc Marquez red. What what do you think? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Just yeah. I'm not sure myself, but I can be wrong.
It was red, yeah. Um, I wouldn't exactly say I was a fan of it either because when I saw a photo of it, I thought it was photoshopped, like in the nicest way possible. I thought the color was genuinely photoshopped. It was that bright. That if that was Mark's input, please, Mark, get a designer. Like, gee, like, it was bright, a bit too bright. It really gave off. I'm in Ducati now, ha ha ha. Screw you all. But like, tone down the color a tiny bit. Think of the people with glasses, Mark, please.
Yeah, compared to the livery that his teammate Pecco Bagnaia was running, it was pretty much just this year's Ducati livery, but with white instead of red. I thought that one looked really good, just in my opinion. I do sort of like white bikes. They just look a bit more clean. I just feel like with Marquez's bike, it could have used a bit more sort of like variance, if that makes sense. It just seemed like it was a bit too much of the sort of solid red color with no like other defining features, I guess.
One thing with the GP25 that we did here is that it's not as big of a jump from the 24 in terms of performance, but it is in feeling. So the GP25, both Pecco and Mark were quoted as saying that it's a lot more stable, which, considering how stable that bike already was, I don't know how you can actually make that more stable. But one thing I do have to say is I totally agree with you, Poz. That white livery was just clean and honestly so lovely. But on to other improvements. I want to talk about Honda and Yamaha specifically because they're the ones where the improvements need to come from. We'll start with Honda because it was really interesting reading the debriefs. So Joanne Mir went through and said, we had the new chassis to try, but that was it. We had no other improvements, and it was quite depressing to hear. But then Luca Marini said the exact opposite, which is really interesting. He said there were lots of new things to try, lots of different parts, and so many different combinations that he could run. What do you guys think about this? Do you think it's the fact that they're using Mir to hopefully get results and Luca more for, what do you say, improving the bike? Or do you just think that Mir has sort of given up already right into the first month or so of his new 2-year deal with Honda?
I wouldn't put it past Mir to have given up at this point. Like, honestly, I would as well. I get you. But it also might just be a case where, like you said, they want Mir to get the results and they're going to keep him on like a new bike. I put that in quotation marks, but you can't see it. But maybe use Marini for a bit of testing, if that makes sense. Marini is the newer rider. They do tend to do that. They give the newer rider like all the bits to try out. And I can see why they want to do that with Luca rather than Joan, because maybe Joan just doesn't care anymore. But in my opinion, I can see it being Mir either just giving up or getting a basic bike so you can get results, and Marini just being used for testing new parts to see how they do.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be particularly the worst thing for Mir to sort of be on a base bike, just with how much he has been not finishing races in recent times, just to sort of get him used to like one bike, not a bike that's changing every 2 or 3 races with new parts. Definitely, I don't think it's a bad idea having 1 or 2 riders, which would probably be sort of like Zarco and Marini, to just be more sort of riders testing all the new parts in the background while the other 2 are trying to get results. Just to sort of put the pressure off of Cantro as well, so he's not thinking, "Oh, I have to go and get results," and not having him doing like all the testing because obviously he's a rookie. Yeah, it's something I could see happening just because of the situation Honda are in. I don't think they'd want to go with all 4 of their riders trying out new parts all the time. So I do think it would be a good idea to sort of have a base bike and base setting for at least some of the riders.
Now, on to their compatriots of Yamaha. I am surprisingly hopeful given what we saw at this test. It did seem that all of the riders, with the exception of Jack Miller, did really well. They seemed very positive at the end of the test, which I think is definitely a good thing. Like Honda, they had a new chassis. There were definitely more upgrades around, but I guess I'd like your thoughts on what you guys think. If Yamaha are going to continue this fight to be closer, especially now they have Pramac, and Jack Miller, because he did not look comfortable on that Yamaha at all, and he was not anywhere up there in testing. I know it's just testing, and I know that we said this the year before. I think it must have been 2023 when we were like, oh my gosh, KTM is so far away, and then they came and they actually like turned up. So, are you guys worried about Jack Miller and Yamaha, or completely not at all?
In terms of Yamaha, I'm not very concerned about them. I'm quite confident in the fact that they've improved. I know, like you said, it's just testing, but testing normally does hold the tiniest bit of value. And I'm hoping that that is the case, and Yamaha have finally come back. In terms of Jack Miller, no, sorry, I'm not. Um, I'm still just the tiniest bit annoyed that he has a seat where another young rider could have come in and taken it. I love Jack to bits, but what has he done? Like, it's in my opinion, still what has he done to retain that seat? I don't understand. Maybe someone else has an opinion, but I don't understand what Jack has done to actually deserve a seat. And on the Yamaha, it was kind of a given that he wasn't going to be comfortable. He's been on a KTM for donkey's years. Like, he's not going to adjust to a completely new format of bike straight away. Hopefully for him, it will. Hopefully for him, he'll adjust by the time the first race comes around. But if he doesn't, then nothing I can do.
Obviously, as an Australian, I'm quite hopeful that Miller can sort of turn it around and also just aid the development of the bike, because that's again the biggest issue. They're not going to be going out there fighting for podiums every race. They're still just trying to get sort of closer to more so like Aprilia and KTM, just off the bottom of the field, get back to even just competing in the midfield for now, like properly competing, fighting for top tens, maybe even top fives. That should be the main focus. And with the riders they have, I feel like obviously bringing in Oliveira and Miller were more so just to aid with that development. Obviously, experienced riders, taken part in developing mainly the KTM's over the years. So yeah, hopeful that they can sort of turn their situation around and get further up the field.
Kelly calling Jack Miller's KTM stint donkey's years has just made me feel extremely, extremely old, because I know my perception of time is very different to your guys, but I'd just consider it a flash in the pan. But
No, right. No, right. I'm going to explain myself here. In terms of MotoGP or any motorsport you ever watch, you know people get replaced mid-season, like consistently. Okay, the fact that Jack stayed 2 years on that KTM, I still don't know how, but the fact that he managed to do that for 2 years, to me, that's donkey years. Okay, for motorsport, staying in a team for 2 or 3 years is donkey years. Leave it be. Okay, in my opinion.
well, that's fair enough. You youngling, you. N-
That young. I'm 17, right? I'm not like 12.
I just a baby. But you still had to say, okay, mom. I just a baby.
Speaking of KTM, Pedro Acosta, he has confirmed via the test that he will be running 37. This is historically the number that he has won world championships on. Now, I am clearly delusional, and while part of me does think that next year is going to be Marc Marquez just sailing off into the distance while we all just stare and go, ah, I kind of missed last year. Do you guys think that Pedro has a hope next year, and what do you guys think about him going back to 37 again?
I'm definitely happy he went back to 37. Like you said, it's the number he's won championships on. It's the number he's known by. Um, I'm happy that he's got his number back. We'll put it that way. In terms of getting the championship, unfortunately, no. I think he still needs this year to develop. I can definitely see him get a win, a couple of wins even. I can definitely see him get a couple of wins this season for sure on that KTM. But I don't see him winning a championship this early. Not at all. There's like at some point you just need to let people develop, and I feel Pedro will definitely do that over the next coming years, but the expectation set on him to win a championship now is just way too high. People don't really understand that developing takes time. You're not going to get it done in a year or 2 years. It might take 2.5 to 3 years to develop, but just give them that time. So yeah, I can see him fighting for the championship maybe like 2027, 2026 even, but not this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that endpoint. Honestly don't really see anyone but Ducati winning up until the next sort of regulation, whenever they come in 2027. I feel like he'll definitely be in like podium and race winning contention in a good amount of races this year, just because he's got the talent, and it's does sort of come down to if KTM manage to sort of turn their late season form around. They haven't had the best of runs lately. Just hasn't seemed like the bike's really been working as they want to, which was highlighted in the end of the season by Jack Miller. But yeah, I think he'll definitely be up there. Maybe an outside shot at the title early on, like Maverick Vinales was this year. But I don't really see him being able to get the job done this early with the machinery he's got.
But without a doubt, I think we all know that KTM are going to be throwing everything at it because they brought in an exhaust system and they brought three or five, I can't remember exactly which, but 3 or 5 variations of aerodynamics. And although I wouldn't expect any big aero upgrades this early in the testing season, it definitely shows that naturally they will be throwing absolutely everything at it. Well, we will wrap up with what I'm sure is every listener's favorite part, the podcast prediction results. Now, I haven't done the math, but quite frankly, I don't even need to do the math because it was clear after Moto 2 that I was definitely out of mathematical contention, but also so was Kelly. So we have to say congratulations to PozzA for winning the championship. I'm extremely disappointed, and next year I will try and do better, but yeah, no such luck from me. What do you guys think about these results?
I wouldn't say you should be disappointed given some of the riders you put in as your predictions. Pedro Acosta to win, Marc Marquez to win before he won. It was I took the mick out of mine, I'm gonna be honest. I was like by the end of it I kind of just given up and I was messing around with who I put in mine, but you like for the entire season it was the most random people, which I respect, but can't really be shocked there. Pause. Well done. Just well done, right. I'm not gonna say anymore because I sound asked. I might be asked. But yeah, well done. Genuinely.
Yeah, in the end, I feel like it just sort of came down to. I'm not trying to like take a shot at you guys, but I feel like in the end it just came down to being less sort of biased towards certain riders. I feel like I didn't always go for the riders that I personally liked. I sort of just went for the ones that I thought were competitive. But that's something that I'm sure you guys will fix for next year, and we'll have another interesting battle.
I absolutely will not be fixing it for next year. Now I know Nepa's still
No,
on the
no,
grid.
lie. Fire will still be on all of mine. every weekend.
That's quite bold considering he'll be a rookie, Kelly.
That's irrelevant, right? Dennis Onshu had some good performances and he's a rookie. Let me believe.